Kathy, you there? Kathy, are you there? Oh, there you go. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Brad.
How are you?
I'm doing okay today. I am.
Good. That's a plus. Tell us about your brother.
Okay, well, my brother um, was an amazing man. He was 63 years old. His birthday was December 6th. He would have been 64. My brother was a tax specialist and enrolled agent. Um, he was a master chess player. He was a fabulous husband, uncle, friend. I mean, he still had his friends from high school that he never lost touch with. My brother loved the outdoors. My brother was a patriot. He loved this country. He loved the property that he lived on in North Carolina. I mean, he just was a beautiful person. And the relationship that I had with my brother, um, kind of like, peas and carrots, I guess. I mean, we could have been twins. I mean, we were like, even at our age, we were like two little kids. What do you want to do? No, what do you want to do? I mean, we were just absolutely in sync with each other on every level, best friends, everything. The only thing we ever argued over was who loved each other more.
And how did you come to learn that he was sick?
Well, I had just come home after being out of town for work for about 3 weeks. And of course, we only lived 15 minutes from each other. So normally we would get together that weekend. And he just said, I'm just not really feeling that great. I'm feeling just a little under the weather. And I said, okay, no problem. He works from home, I work from home. So yeah, we'll catch up later in the week. So, of course, my brother's not feeling good. So the next day I would check in with him, how are you doing? Pretty much the same, not that great. And then, you know, a few days later, he just wasn't getting any better.
And at the time, how much did you know about any preventative treatments or any early treatments that might have been appropriate in regards to COVID-19? And at what point did the question of testing come up to you?
Well, I had been paying attention, actually. I mean, I'm a podcast, listener, and I pay attention, at least I try to pay attention anyway. And I remember this past June, so June of 2021, I was doing some, cleaning, whatever, listening to a podcast on BitChute with Dr. Corey and Brett Weinstein. And it was about a 2.5 hour discussion, and it was about ivermectin. And I was blown away, just absolutely blown away by what Dr. Corey was saying and the discussion that took place. Of course, I just kind of tucked that into the back of my mind. And then I had learned about a hospital in Illinois. I learned about this in June, but there was a woman whose mother had been on a ventilator at this hospital. And it just so happened, I know this hospital. I used to live in Illinois, and I actually know somebody who works on that same floor, COVID floor, at that hospital during that time. Well, this woman, she found out about a lawyer in New York who had sued a hospital to get their loved one the ivermectin, and it worked. So she contacted this lawyer in New York, and they won. The judge said, absolutely, your mother should get ivermectin. The hospital was ordered to actually bring somebody in that was an hour away to give her mother the ivermectin, which is just a 5-day treatment. It's like one pill a day for 5 days, or however. I mean, she was on a ventilator, so obviously it had to be a liquid form. But after 4 days, her mother was off the ventilator after 4 days, and she had been on the ventilator for over 4 weeks and literally had no chance of living. So again, I just kind of tucked that into the back of my mind, thinking, wow, this is phenomenal. Like, this is unbelievable. I had
Now,
also been
Kathy, when during this time, are you getting any information about this um, potential treatment if and when you come down with COVID-19? Are you getting any messaging from public health authorities like
oh, none,
CDC?
none.
Nothing.
In fact, if anything, you started to hear negative information like this is a horse dewormer. People are overdosing, going to, farm and feed stores and getting this horse dewormer. And I knew that it wasn't true. I knew it. But this is what I'm hearing. And then I had come across Dr. Artis, who told his story about his father dying, not because of COVID, but because of remdesivir. So then I had also learned how horrifying remdesivir is. And I had also learned, basically, if you get COVID, do not go in the hospital, do not take remdesivir, and do not get ventilated. And ivermectin is, it's effective during all stages of COVID. Whereas hydroxychloroquine and other treatments might only be effective during the first beginning signs of COVID or even prior to hospital. But I knew that ivermectin would be successful in all stages. So I
And
knew
the
these
sad part
things.
about it, Kathy, is that, quite frankly, anybody doing the most basic research should have known this by at least the middle of 2020 about
Yes.
these alternative treatments and the benefit of
Yes.
early treatments. And just anyone with common sense knows that it's the wrong thing to do to send a patient home with this uh, virus that then has an opportunity to
Right.
take over your organs. So what you're basically telling us is you are more sophisticated than most, if not,
A
well,
little bit,
certainly
yeah.
most of the
Yeah,
public health
I a little
authority.
bit. Like, I wasn't a know-it-all, but I knew enough to
So you're
know
about as
what he
you're
shouldn't
about
be
as
doing.
equipped you're about as equipped to deal with this. You're filtering out the nonsense from Dr. Fauci and others,
Yes.
all the disinformation that they've thrown out there.
Hmm.
You've done your own analysis. You've been paying attention. You've somehow made it through all the algorithms that control this information for getting out on Facebook and Twitter. Um, and, results in people getting banned. And you've actually got the information that's germane to survival. And here you are, and you find out your brother's sick. What happened?
I just want to say that I also knew that even if he were to run to his doctor, you know, he would be probably tested positive. And I also knew they would just send him home, that he wasn't doing anything that, even if he had gone to the doctor 2 days in and was tested positive, they still would have just sent him home and said, take some, aspirin and whatever. When you can't breathe, come back. So I did know that too.
So
So,
basically, you and people like us knew that if you go to a United States physician who's taken a Hippocratic oath and is
mhm,
properly licensed in their state, that if you go for help to get your life saved, to get proper medication, you're going to be sent home without anything, and the best medical advice is going to be sit at home and let this virus uh, cause infection in your organs to where it adversely impacts your lung function. And when it gets down to a certain amount, it gets down to a certain level, you then can be admitted into a hospital where you can get the drugs that they give you there. Was that your understanding of the scenario
yes,
you're facing?
yes,
And
yes.
what
And I
happened?
also know that there's a lot of people who get COVID. And in fact, I know, I don't have fact, but I'm pretty sure that I got COVID in December of 2019. I've not been sick a moment since that happened. But I had all the symptoms, same thing, it was a little scary, but of course I didn't know it was COVID, right? I didn't have all the fear in me. I just, so anyway, my point being is that I knew that even though my brother didn't feel well, first of all, he's healthy. He has no health issues. I think he was taking high blood pressure medicine, but he was a healthy man. And I just knew that, hey, so he might have a few little, he might feel achy, whatever, sit this out. Well, probably around day 3 or 4, I kept asking him, can you breathe okay? Is your breathing okay? And he goes, yeah, I can breathe fine. I said, okay, and so I started to get a little bit concerned, and I knew my primary doctor, whom I won't go back to him. I knew that he was not going to be supportive in this because I already kind of knew his take on this anyway. So I called my husband's doctor's office and I asked, does this doctor prescribe ivermectin? And the receptionist was kind of vague. It was really kind of weird. Like I couldn't get a straight answer from her, but she didn't say no. And I said, okay, well, I'd like to set up an appointment for my brother. And she says, well, this doctor isn't available for 2 weeks. Well, obviously that's not going to work, So she gave me another doctor and she set up a virtual appointment for him. So I want to say this was probably October 6th, 7th. And then I was able to set up a virtual appointment for him for October 11th. Well, another day passes, he's not getting any better. And I also know that this can take a turn for the worse very quickly. So I thought he's got to be seen somehow. So I actually set up another virtual appointment for him on that Saturday. So the Saturday before Monday. And I told him, now he knew he needed ivermectin. He goes, yes, I know I need ivermectin. I said, Rob, that's what you need this doctor to prescribe for you is ivermectin. He goes, okay. So he gets on this virtual call. The call was 2 minutes long. The doctor just asked him some of his symptoms, and all he said to him was, well, you need to go to the ER. That was it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so my brother did go to the ER, and he sat there for 4 hours, and he was sick. So picture yourself with like a really bad flu. You have the chills, body aches, fever, the whole bit. He sat there for 4 hours by himself because his wife, who'd been living in the same home with him, in the same bed with him the whole time, was not allowed to sit next to him in the emergency room. So she
This is a
literally
theme, by the way. This is a theme. So whether or not there was intent or not, the effect is that Americans en masse were denied the ability to have a co-pilot or a spouse or a loved one pay attention as a deputy caregiver, if that's what you want to call, or somebody who can be another source of information about medical information about the patient. And as a policy across the country, they were banned from having any contact with these patients once they got into the hospital. It's terrible.
So he was cold because I talked to him and he goes, yeah, I'm sitting here in this emergency room. I'm freezing. And they took him and they gave him the COVID test. He tested positive and that was it. And he sat there for 4 hours. And finally he gave up. He just walked out. Like, what are they doing for me? I can do this at home. So this was Saturday. He knew he had the appointment on Monday. Well, he ends up making an appointment with his own primary care doctor. So he goes to the office only because he has COVID symptoms. He's not allowed to even enter the office. So I don't know. I messaged my sister-in-law. So I don't know if if the actual doctor came out or if a nurse came out, but all they did was they gave him the finger test for your blood oxygen. And they said it was low, and they called EMT literally from his car. They called EMT, took him to a local hospital. That night, again, wife can't see him, nothing. That night, in the middle of the night, he ends up having a heart attack. Or so they think a heart attack, like there's signs for it. And they don't contact his wife at all. She goes to the hospital the next day to bring him some things. Now she can't see him, but just to bring him some things. Oh, he's not here. What do you mean he's not here? No, we transferred him to
Do
another
we know what
hospital.
medication he got? Do we know what medication
No,
he?
I don't know. And they have locked down his medical records.
Okay, we're gonna have, see, this is unfortunate because there's no legitimate justification to embargo his medical records. I mean,
We had
what
access
is the
to his
legitimate purpose
medical
of that?
records until the day he died. I could log on to his my Novant records. I could see all of his medical records until the day he died, and they shut down his account.
Okay, and you're in North Carolina, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the second odd case like this that I've seen specifically from North Carolina. I wonder if state enforcers have any interest. We shall see. But continue, please.
So, so he goes to this other hospital, and again, he's denied access to anyone. I can't see him. His wife can't see him. And he's sick. He's not feeling good, obviously. They have him on oxygen and whatever. And now they're pushing remdesivir on him. Well, you need remdesivir. They also, because of the possibility of a heart attack, they wanted him to do a heart catheterization. And it's a very, very, very risky procedure, even on a good day. Okay. My brother had one of these 20 years ago. He had a stent put in 20 years ago. He's not had any cardiac issues since then. And he said no, only because he was struggling with breathing. And he said, get my breathing normal. And then, yeah, sure, I'll do the heart catheterization. Well, he didn't want to do the remdesivir. He didn't. Well, the doctors kept pressuring him. And his wife and I did not even get to speak to a doctor until after he was there for 3 days. And when I spoke to his doctor for the first time, I said, I've heard horrible things about remdesivir. I heard that there's a 54% chance of death, that it shuts down organs. And all the doctor could say was, well, there's risks in everything. Okay. And then I brought up ivermectin. And he says, well, that's not typically what we do. And he said to me, I have no problem prescribing ivermectin. I don't. He says, but let me check with the hospital first to see about
There we
protocol.
go.
Yep. Let
There
me
we
see
go.
about protocol. And he says, I'll get back to you. And I said, please. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, really, is it really this simple? Like, he says he has no problem doing it.
No,
Well,
it's
he
not.
never got back to me. He never got back to me, because keep in mind, when you go in the hospital, at least in North Carolina, you have what they call hospitalists. So the primary doctor that sent him to that hospital never saw him. Never saw him. You get thrown into the den, I'll call it, of hospitalists. And there's like 7 of them. You have no idea who they are. You never vented them. You never chose them. Nothing.
God.
So they become your caregivers, and you know nothing about them. So I was talking to my brother's nurse, and she was very friendly to me, very friendly. And she says, oh, because of course I was very appreciative. How's my brother doing? And at this point, he was not in the ICU, but I knew that he wasn't feeling well, and I didn't want to bother him. You know what I mean? Let me speak to the nurse. And she was very friendly and very nice, and I was so appreciative. And she says, well, you can call here anytime. I'll talk to you anytime. I said, thank you so much. So I called back a little bit later, and I said, I haven't heard back from the doctor. He was supposed to call me back because I asked him about ivermectin. And she says, we don't do that. I said, what do you mean you don't do it? She says, ivermectin kills people. I said, really? I said, that's not my understanding of it. I said, because in North Carolina, you either have Novant or you have Atrium. So I said, well, what about Atrium? Oh, they're all the same. We're not allowed to. I said, okay. Well, the next time I called she said to me, her demeanor completely changed. And she said, you could only call here once a day. And if you want any other updates, you can call your brother directly.
Wow.
Okay. So I asked her, please, please, please ask this doctor to call me back. He didn't. I requested him again to call me back. He never did. And then literally after he went into the hospital on October 11th, which was a Monday. By Wednesday, to our knowledge, he was already on Remdesivir on Wednesday. And by Friday, he was ventilated. And then they throw you into another den, which I call the intensivist den. Well, then that's another group of 7 or more doctors whom, again, you know nothing about. And my brother was literally being tossed around like a loaf of bread with doctors. And these doctors don't always have the same protocol, by the way. I mean, they have a little bit of the same protocol, but not necessarily. And I'll give you an example. Proning. When a patient is in this situation, even before being ventilated with a COVID situation, breathing situation, they absolutely should be turned on their stomach. This never happened to my brother prior to being ventilated. Well, then he gets ventilated. Well, one doctor prones him, another doctor doesn't. So you get this inconsistency. So he had been in the ICU for probably maybe 2 days. At this point, he'd been in the hospital for about 12 or 13 days. And finally, they said, yes, he can have 2 visitors. So me and his wife came to see him. And what they do, Brad, this is complete torture, by the way. They give your loved one a paralytic, meaning that you can't move. You can hear, you can think, you can be in any kind of agony, but it doesn't matter because they paralyze your body to where you cannot respond in any way. And then they give you medication to, I'm sorry, I'm kind of drawing a blank to this, but to calm you down, right? Tranquilizers, call it, right? Tranquilizers, right? But you don't know how good these tranquilizers are because his body is paralyzed as a tube is shoved down his body. So he can't respond in any way. And this is what they do. And then the moment that you do try to respond, so if something wears off, whether it be the paralytic or the whatever they're using to calm you down, if you still are trying to respond, they strap your arms down. So my brother's arms were strapped down. This is pure torture. I came in, I think it was, I don't know if it was the first time I came in or the second time. He had dried blood all over his face. My brother had a beautiful goatee beard, and his whole lower face was caked in dried blood. And right away I said, what is going on? What is this? Oh, well, we don't know. Yeah, we just haven't had a chance to get to him. I did find out that the ICU nurses have 2 patients a shift, 2. And when I came in, my brother had caked blood all over him. I said, please give me some washcloths. I will wash his face. And I kept asking, what is causing this blood? Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Okay, so as I'm washing his face, I noticed there's a deep gash on his lip. So I call a nurse in. I said, I think this might be what's causing his bleeding. And she says, let me see. Now she's got, the surgical gloves on. And I kid you not, she grabs her cell phone with blood on her fingers after, digging in my brother's mouth with blood. And she touches her cell phone to turn on her cell phone light so that she could see inside his mouth. Now, we all know how nasty cell phones are, right? The most unsanitary thing you could possibly have in your hand. I was mortified. I was in such shock. I was more concerned about her. Like, really? You just put my brother's blood on your phone, but not
Right.
really thinking the germs on her phone also touched my brother's mouth.
Kathy, you said that they intubated him on the Friday, he got in on Monday. You
Mm-hmm.
realized on Wednesday, as best you can tell, you think he got remdesivir over your explicit instructions not to. We don't know what happened, when he was semi-conscious, if they had him sign some kind of a form. We've seen all kinds of, uh,
I believe they did have him sign a form, but he didn't know what to do. I'm telling him
course,
no, but then his friends are telling him, trust the doctors, do what they tell you.
of course, yeah, you're thinking that the doctors are actually there to help you. It's a little bit of a adjustment when it doesn't always turn out to be the case. So were you able to see him physically while he still was able to move and wasn't paralyzed?
No,
Okay.
no.
Were you able to talk to him on the phone?
I talked to him on the phone just before they ventilated him.
And was he
And
panting?
pardon me?
Was he panting? Was
No,
he having a hard time breathing?
no. He
And he's talking
said,
to you like we're talking here,
yes.
but
And
he's
I
so
said,
desperate that he's got to be put on this ventilator, which my understanding is that after patient zero in New Jersey, the word got out from Wuhan that ventilators were not the right way to go. By the way, there's going to have to be a big investigation into ventilators. Everything they're going to have like many, many agents are going to have to be redeployed from chasing after, loitering grandmas on the Capitol, and they're going to have to go to actually investigating many genocides that happened in various states, and this whole movement towards ventilating everybody. Not to mention the whole thing about remdesivir. That's a whole nother scandal. It will
mm-hmm.
embroil the country for decades to come when they realize what's been done to Americans. But you're saying that he's just basically having a conversation with you, and that he was deemed to have been in such dire straits that they then put him on a ventilator.
So I found out that he was going to be put on a ventilator. So I was able to get through to him. And I really at this point just wanted to calm him down, right? Obviously it's very upsetting. And he says, "Well, Kathy, it's like a 50 chance of living if I go on the ventilator." And I said, "Then Rob, don't. You don't have to go on the ventilator. You can tell them no." And he said, "You're right. Exactly the way that I'm telling you." He says, "You're right. I don't have to go on the ventilator. Damn it. You're right. I will tell them I'm not doing it." And then 2 hours later, I find out that he's already in ICU and they're putting him on a ventilator.
Yeah, and like I said, I've said to everybody that we've interviewed, you're number 16. Um, we're we've been doing timelines of experiences, uh, texts to loved ones reporting on condition, FaceTimes, um, and lining it up with billing and the incentives as to what's actually happening to the patients. And it's a extraordinarily disturbing picture that is told about American healthcare. I mean, shameful, absolutely shameful. There's going to have to be a major accounting and an inventory of what exactly happened that we got to this stage. So after your brother was ventilated, did were you able to communicate him with him? Did you get the
No.
sense that he was there?
Yes. Yes. In fact, there was one day there, and my sister-in-law, I had this idea of actually rubbing his body with essential oils, and because it was good for his circulation and the touch, and we would rub his legs and his feet and his his arm, and whatever. And every time a doctor or a nurse came in, and you are, and what are you doing, and how much, and whatever, and I had a notebook. I was taking names, everything. And I said to this doctor, I said, what is going on? Like, why, like, what's going on with his eyes? His eyes are like, I just noticed something. Like, now his eyes are closed, keep in mind, and they'd never been open. I'd never seen his eyes open. And his eyes, it was like something was going on. And he goes, because he knows you're here. And that's why he's doing that. And I couldn't believe it. I was so happy, of course. And I even connected him. I would put earbuds in his ear, and I would have like my son talk to him, and his best friends, and his daughter, and you know, it just earbuds. I could have this private conversation with him, that kind of thing. Because I do believe that even though they're put in these induced, comas, that they can still feel your presence, know that you're there, and even maybe even hear you. And so anyway, each doctor, he was only there, Brad. So he got vented on Friday, which would have been what, like the 14th, 15th, let's say. And then we were able to see him for the first time, I think, on Monday, which would have been what, like the 18th, I think. Me and his wife got to see him for the first time. And every doctor that we saw, I brought up ivermectin, everyone. Well, after 3 days, so he got vented on Friday, and by Wednesday, they sent in a, I'm sorry, I feel kind of bad because I felt so dumb because I didn't even realize it, but they called in a paleontologist. Like, what? Like, who are you? And why are you talking to us? And like, I do have some experience in the medical field. I'm not completely, I mean, I do have a little experience, but I'd never heard of that before. The same as I'd never heard of a hospitalist, and I'd never heard of an intensivist before. I'm like, okay, well, okay. And this, we just had this nice conversation with this person. And then I realized after the fact, they have given up on him. They're done. There is nothing more. They were basically saying to his wife, if he were to code, what do you want to do about it?
Wow.
And they literally they weren't going to offer him anything more. They had taken him off antibiotics. They had taken him off steroids. Now, keep in mind, he had only been in the hospital, I don't know, 10 days? No, well, less than that, actually, because if that was the 18th and he went in on the 11th,
Did they
you know
did
what I'm
they
saying?
connect your access to him in any way to signing a DNR or authorizing him to go to hospice? We've seen that a lot.
Well, I told him that I wanted him to be moved. And of course I said, oh no, that's way too risky. And I also, the one very important key thing I do want to mention, we did hire a lawyer. We hired a lawyer the day he got vented. We hired a lawyer to enforce the hospital to give him ivermectin. And we hired the same lawyer that helped that patient in Illinois and many other patients around the country to force hospitals to give ivermectin. And so that was in the works. We were solidifying whatever. So that was on Friday. By Wednesday, they had already given up on him. And then the following week, the hospital got sued. So the hospital got the legal notice, the formal notice that they were being sued to go to
What was their
court.
reaction? Did they say, "Oh, that's what we need. Let's give him some ivermectin"? Was that their reaction?
About the ivermectin? I
When
actually, I should kind of back up a little bit. Every time I mention ivermectin, well, that one doctor, I said, yeah, I have no problem giving it to him. That's not what we typically do, but sure. Okay. But he got shut down. Right. So now in ICU, every doctor that I talk to, they were no, we don't do that. The CDC, it's not the CDC protocol. Now, in the meantime, I am printing off information. I am printing off the FLCCC Math Plus protocol for ICU patients. I printed it and I've got like 10 copies and I'm handing it to whomever, whatever. I'm speaking to every nurse that comes into the room. I have it posted on his whiteboard, Dr. Corey, Dr. Merrick, all of them, right? Like, listen, people. And so I'm talking to this one doctor and I said, I'm listening to world renowned doctors who are frontline COVID critical care doctors who absolutely say this protocol is necessary to survive. And you are? And what's your experience? Are you world renowned? Why should I listen to you and not them? They made it very clear from the get-go that family had no part in his care. None.
and
And
of course, they're all one of the convenient things about the FDA protocol, and FDA is going to be
it's actually the CDC protocol.
there's a CDC protocol, there's an FDA protocol,
Okay.
and eventually, when this clinical sociological insanity lifts, these agencies are going to have a real hard time continuing to exist, because what they've done here is such a breach of every kind of public service credo, obligation, duty, everything. They just
Everything.
shattered it. These
Yes.
agencies had so much goodwill built up over decades, and they just completely destroyed it. I know people who literally will not go anywhere near a hospital because they're afraid they're going to be killed in hospitals.
I'll never
Because
step foot in one.
if your lung function is compromised and you get near a hospital, they're gonna you're very likely to get vented. You're going to have to get remdesivir, and there's no way that remdesivir should be given to your worst enemy, let
Right.
alone all Americans as a first line of defense. Ultimately, when our enforcement agencies get back into the business of investigating and criminally prosecuting things that are an actual national security interest to the people of the United States, these people are all going to be held accountable. Right now, all the enforcement agencies are doing things, God only knows what they're doing, a lot of wasted time stuff. I mean, I can't even believe the stuff they're investigating. Nothing anybody cares about, right? Meanwhile, right under their noses, there are genocides happening. And how I'm talking to you, FBI agents, my former colleagues, how you can stand by and not move within your agencies to insist that your agencies do the right thing and actually investigate things that are killing Americans. I'm making an inference, or I'm alleging something. I've heard from friends who are in these agencies that they're trying very, very hard to do this, but there aren't enough of them. We need more of them. There's there's Americans who are being killed. We need your help. Go to your ASACs, go to your SACs, and say, I don't want to do another lead request to some grandma in Illinois about some protest march she went to. I want to investigate people who are being killed in a hospital. There were 40 deaths that occurred over this time period when this FDA protocol was being enforced on all the doctors. All the doctors feel like they're in handcuffs. All the
Yes,
nurses,
and that's
they don't
true.
talk about what they're doing, and they're forced to do it. That's what
Yes.
you should be investigating.
Yes.
We're going to keep
And
on saying it, and there's going to be more and more people that keep on saying it.
yes, and there
It
was
just can't
one or
stand.
two doctors that I brought this up with. They even said you could tell that they knew they could not even agree with me. Do you know what I'm saying? So like they knew that they couldn't even say to me, you know what, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm sorry, I can't. So they couldn't even do that. But one or two of them did say to me, even if they said no, right? It's not part of our protocol. And I even said to one, since when do you follow CDC protocol? Since when? And they said, well, COVID, we don't know enough, blah, blah, because they know they've never followed CDC protocol before on anything necessarily, because it's only a guideline. That's all it is. It's just a guideline.
There's a big bonus structure that's built in to using all these medications that kill you. There's a bonus that you get when you vent people.
Right.
There's certain
And I
time
knew that.
periods, and they do some shuffling of patients to get around the time periods. Everyone's going to find this out, everybody. And
Yeah.
I'm going to say something else too. When this is finally investigated, they're going to try to attribute all responsibility to treating doctors and nurses. So all these other people that as a practical matter made it impossible for you to do the right thing on a patient care basis, and all the things that make it impossible, the retaliation that you realistically fear, all those things, the fingerprint that existed is going to be erased going forward. And they're going to be pointing to things like, well, ivermectin, you could have used that there was an off-label use that was permitted, and it was second on the list. So really, doctor, in some kind of future where people are being prosecuted or they're being sued or whatever, any defense that is real and it's legitimate now, you have to sustain a lot of professional risk to do the right thing and engage in patient care. And that's the reality right now. But in 1 to 2 years, the trail to that is going to be obscured. It's going to be erased. And they're going to basically leave responsibility to those treating physicians and nurses. And that's why we
Brad,
have a white paper
when they told
real quick. That's why we've done a white paper, and we're gonna release it soon, involving amnesty and leniency for treating physicians and nurses to protect them. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that even when one of the doctors was telling us that he had a 5% chance of living, 5% chance, I said, why won't you give him ivermectin? No, we can't. Why? Well, it could hurt him. Really? Are you even hearing yourself?
Was he put in hospice?
No, he never got that
Okay.
far. Because keep in mind, he was admitted on the 11th and he died on the 28th.
Okay.
So he was there just over 2 weeks. And he
Yeah.
didn't die on his own, by the way. He didn't die on his own. His life support was cut off. And that was, I believe, because the hospital knew they were being sued. And just like when I had first brought up ivermectin, the last day that I saw him, they were very rude, extremely rude to me. I had the chaplain come in to say prayers with my brother, and they interrupted. I literally stopped and I asked the nurse, what are you doing? Can my brother please have an ounce of dignity and respect? I mean, that's how bad it was. They would not even leave me alone in the room with him.
Yeah, that's really, it's really hard to try to understand how things could have gotten to this point where we're treating fellow human beings like this. It's beyond, it's very hard to deal with.
So
what was the last conversation that you had with your brother?
Well, the last conversation I had was just before he was saying he was going to be ventilated. So that was the very last conversation that I had with him. But I mean, prior to that, I mean, I talked to him every day when he was sick. How are you doing, Rob? How are you doing, Rob?
Right.
How are you doing, Rob?
And can I ask you something, Kathy?
Sure.
When at that point when he's going to be ventilated, you have no way of knowing. I mean, on some level, this is really dire.
Oh, I was devastated. I was devastated. I was working from home. I was, working with the company, and I was working from home. And when I heard literally that he was already being wheeled into the ICU, I slammed my laptop down, messaged the people that I worked with. I said, I am out of pocket and I don't know when I'm coming back, because now in my mind, this was all hands on deck. My brother needs every ounce of my attention at this point. And unfortunately, it was too late. It was literally like walking him into a gas chamber.
I have some video that I'll play if you're okay with it. I won't if you don't want me to.
No, I want you to. The only reason why I did this video, because I don't like taking pictures of people, you know, in the hospital or anything like that. But I realized that morning I needed to start documenting, because people need to see what is going on. This has nothing, I've never shared this with a family member, no one. And a nurse actually started to challenge me, and I said, excuse me, this is my brother and I have every right to video him, and I'm documenting. This is what I'm doing.
Well, you're very courageous, and I want to commend you. And it's heartwarming just to know how much you loved your brother and how much he loved you. And the fact you're willing to share this very difficult video with us. And as I mentioned, we spoke briefly before. The reason we're doing this is because there's a chance we might turn this absolute abominable, excruciatingly painful, tragic loss into some impetus to protect somebody else. Maybe we can protect somebody else. And that's why you don't see a lot of editing and all kinds of stuff. We're just going live and raw, and we're just starting to get these videos out there. We have them on a clock, so no matter what happens, they're going to continue to be released. And so, without any further ado, I'm going to.
Brad, I just want to say one thing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The gratitude that I feel for what you're doing, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of my brother as well, is immense. You have no idea how grateful we are for you and the people that you work with. Thank you.
Yeah, it isn't me. It's the former Feds Group Freedom Foundation, and this is the Remdesivir support group and action committee, and it's also an adjunct of the Humanity Betrayal Remembrance Project. We believe that these are crimes against humanity, and we believe that we're going to unearth what actually happened. We're going to unearth the truth. We're going to gather and collect all the evidence. We're going to preserve it, and we're going to tee this up in a way so that these people can be brought to justice, and that the actual national security challenges that the country has can be properly addressed by the greatest law enforcement agencies in the world, which are right now diverted. We need the FBI. We need the inspectors general. We need all hands on deck, all the talented assistant U.S. attorneys in the 96 U.S. attorneys' offices, the criminal division, the antitrust division, to focus on this. Antitrust division actually should be focusing on the information suppression system that exists in two monopolies, Google and Facebook. But I digress. But we're all together as Americans. We're gonna gather our momentum, and we're going to insist that justice be done here. And as somebody, for every one of me, there's 1,000 behind me, and we're all going to be doing the same thing. For every one of Kathy, hopefully there aren't any more Kathys. If we're successful, there won't be any more Kathys. There won't be any more your brothers, Kathy. This is why we're going to.
This is happening every day, Brad. It's happening at this very moment. At this very moment, it's happening to another family.
Right.
Thank you.
We had calls last night, and you're absolutely right. So I'm going to play this. Bear with me. I'm not the best with tech issues. We'll see how it goes.
Really generous to everyone and loved by everyone. And this is what happens when we are denied a very simple, safe medication that costs $2 a pill. Billions of people have taken it, won a Nobel Peace Prize, and my beautiful brother is denied it. slowly dying, being murdered on your watch, by the way. While everybody runs around in their pretty little scrubs and face masks and the whole bit, this amazing man sits there alone, dying. Yep.
Well, thank you very much, Kathy. I want to change the layout here. There you are. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for sharing your very thank you for sharing your personal tragedy. It's just wiped out your family, all your brother's friends. And hopefully we're going to be able to work together to stop this. Any last thoughts or comments or things about your brother you'd like us to know?
He loved life. He absolutely loved life. He told me when he goes to bed at night, he couldn't wait to wake up in the morning. Couldn't wait. And every day was just a beautiful day to him. But the one last thing I do want to just mention, and if I had known this, Brad, if I had known this on October 6th, 7th, whatever, he would be alive today. If I had known to go to the website flccc.net, my brother would be alive today. And that stands for Frontline COVID Critical Care Alliance. If I had known that, he would be sitting with me.
And we're going to, because their first web host deplatformed them. So one of the things we have to do over the break is to meet with them, and we're going to offer to house their information on an additional server. We're doing this for a lot of different entities. There's also other brave, courageous physicians who are engaged in this fight with us, and it gets harder and harder to keep these websites up because the system just it's got a lot of tentacles. It's really pretty impressive how effective they can be at squelching information and truth from getting out. But we're going to keep on fighting that battle. Thank you very much, Kathy, and
Thank you, Brad.
I look forward to seeing you later on tonight at our weekly meeting.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, and
All
thank
right.
you so much for what you do and sharing your pain. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Brad. Bye.